The day had finally arrived and the air was filled with excitement and joy. Everyone in the family had been preparing for this wedding for months and now it was happening. The bride looked like a dream in her white gown, her face glowing with happiness. She had waited for this moment since she was a little girl, and it was hard for her to believe it was real. The groom could not stop smiling. His suit fit perfectly, but more than that, the way he looked at his bride told everyone how deeply he loved her. Their hands kept meeting, as if they could not believe they were finally husband and wife. The wedding ceremony was held in a modest hall, but it felt like a palace that day. Decorations of flowers and soft lights made the place shine. Friends whispered among themselves about how beautiful everything looked. Family members moved around making sure the guests were comfortable. Even the children seemed unusually calm, watching everything with wide eyes as if they too understood this was a special day. When the music began, the bride walked slowly down the aisle. Everyone stood to watch and some had tears in their eyes. The groom's eyes were fixed on her and he felt a lump in his throat. The minister spoke words that touched every heart, words about love, respect, patience, and trust. As the vows were exchanged, the hall grew silent. The bride promised to be by her husband's side in every season of life, while the groom promised to care for her with all his strength. Their voices trembled, not from fear but from the weight of their emotions. After the vows, the rings were exchanged. They were simple gold bands, but in that moment they seemed brighter than diamonds. The minister declared them husband and wife, and the couple sealed their promises with a gentle kiss. Guests clapped, cheered, and some even shouted words of joy. Cameras clicked, recording the smiles, the tears, and the love that seemed to fill the whole room. The first few minutes as husband and wife were like a dream for them. They looked around, overwhelmed by the love and support surrounding them. Friends came forward with hugs, relatives gave blessings, and everyone wanted to take a picture with the couple. The bride laughed shyly as her new husband whispered small jokes in her ear to calm her excitement. Both of them looked like they were glowing with happiness. In one corner, the bride's mother wiped her eyes, whispering a prayer of gratitude. She thought of all the nights she had prayed for her daughter to find a kind and responsible partner. Now, watching her daughter's joy, her heart felt full. The groom's father shook hands proudly with guests, repeating how lucky his son was. People could see that these families were not just celebrating a marriage, but also the joining of two households. As the ceremony came to an end, the couple moved outside for photographs. The sun was soft, giving everything a golden touch. The photographer guided them into different poses, holding hands, looking into each other's eyes, laughing together. They didn't need to act because their smiles were real. Guests teased them, calling them the perfect couple, and the bride blushed while the groom pulled her close. Later, they found a quiet spot for just a few minutes. Away from the crowd, they finally had a chance to talk freely. The bride told her husband how thankful she was to have him, while the groom promised her that life from now on would be full of adventures, dreams, and endless love. They spoke about their honeymoon, their future home, and even the small things like how they wanted to cook meals together. It was simple, yet it felt magical. Back inside, the hall was alive with laughter and clinking glasses. The wedding cake stood tall, decorated with delicate designs. The couple cut it together, feeding each other small bites as people clapped and cheered again. Children ran around with plates of sweets while elders shared memories of their own weddings. Every detail of the day seemed perfect, and no one could have guessed that destiny had its own plans. The guests began preparing to leave, but before that, everyone wanted to say goodbye to the newlyweds. The bride and groom stood together hand in hand, thanking each person. Their warmth and gratitude touched everyone. They were not just a couple in love. They were two people who valued family and friendship deeply. Finally, it was time for the couple to leave. A car had been decorated with ribbons, flowers, and the classic sign that read, "Just Married." Guests gathered outside, throwing petals and waving. The bride's gown brushed the ground as she stepped carefully into the car, while her groom held the door for her. They laughed as people shouted blessings and teased them. The groom started the engine, but before driving away, he leaned out of the window to thank everyone once again. As the car rolled away, the bride leaned her head on her husband's shoulder. They talked softly, their voices mixed with excitement and relief that the ceremony was behind them. He told her that the best part of the day was not the decorations or the photos, but the moment he held her hand and called her his wife. She smiled, agreeing that nothing could compare to that. Back at the hall, the family slowly began to clean up and talk among themselves. They were excited for the dinner party that was planned for later, where they would celebrate even more. Nobody had even the smallest idea of what was waiting just a little ahead on the road. For now, the memory that stayed in everyone's mind was of a perfect wedding, a perfect day, and two young hearts beginning their journey together. That first half hour of married life was filled with hope, laughter, and dreams. It felt like the opening chapter of a long and beautiful book, but hidden in the next page was a twist that no one could have imagined. After the ceremony ended, the couple stepped into their new life with hearts full of joy. The hall still echoed with laughter and music, but for them, the world outside felt brighter. They sat inside the decorated car, smiling as petals rained on the windshield. Friends stood waving with tears in their eyes while the families clapped and shouted blessings. The bride leaned closer to her husband and whispered that it felt like a dream. He smiled, holding her hand tightly on the steering wheel, promising her that the dream had only just begun. The road stretched ahead, long and open, with the evening sun painting everything in shades of orange and gold. The bride looked out of the window, her heart racing with excitement. She thought about how everything had gone perfectly. The vows, the rings, the photos, even the little jokes shared during the ceremony. She laughed suddenly, remembering how nervous her husband had been when the photographer asked him to pose romantically. He chuckled too, recalling how her veil got caught in his suit button, and how they both struggled not to laugh in the middle of the ceremony. The car smelled faintly of roses, thanks to the flowers tied all around it. They could still hear the soft rustle of ribbons against the wind. It was like the world was celebrating with them. The groom asked her if she was tired. She shook her head, saying she felt lighter than ever. She told him she wanted to remember every detail of this day, every word, every smile. He looked at her with admiration, promising her that there would be many more days to remember. As they drove, the couple began to talk about their dinner party. The groom described how his father had planned everything carefully. Delicious food, music, and even a slideshow of their childhood pictures. The bride laughed, imagining her younger self with messy hair on a big screen. She teased him, saying his baby pictures were even funnier. They shared little secrets, laughing so hard that their eyes watered. But between the laughter, there were also soft moments of silence. The bride thought about her parents, who had raised her with love and care, and how emotional they looked as she walked down the aisle. She whispered to her husband that she wanted to honor their parents in every way. He agreed, saying that their families were the biggest blessing they had. They promised to treat their parents with love and respect, just as they would treat each other. The groom's phone buzzed with a message from his best friend, asking where they were and if they were ready to eat. He laughed, showing the message to his wife, and she teased that her new family was already waiting to feed her too much food. She smiled warmly, feeling grateful to be surrounded by so much love. The car continued to roll gently on the road, carrying them closer to the next part of their celebration. The couple also began to dream aloud about their honeymoon. They had chosen a place not too far, a small coastal town where the waves touched the sand like whispers. The bride said she wanted to watch the sunrise on the beach, holding his hand. He said he wanted to take long walks with her, forgetting the world. They spoke of exploring new places together, tasting new foods, and making memories that would last forever. Their voices were soft, but their hearts spoke louder, filled with hope for the days ahead. As they passed through a busy street, people noticed the decorated car. Strangers waved at them, shouting congratulations. Children pointed and clapped, excited by the flowers and ribbons. The couple waved back, laughing at the unexpected attention. The bride leaned back in her seat and whispered that she felt like a queen for a day. The groom replied that for him she would always be one. They soon left the crowded street and entered a quieter road lined with tall trees. The branches swayed gently as if blessing the couple. The bride rested her head on her husband's shoulder, closing her eyes for a moment. He glanced at her with tenderness, realizing how lucky he was. He thought about how they had met years ago, how shy she was at first, and how their friendship slowly grew into love. He thanked destiny in his heart for bringing her into his life. The car's radio played a soft tune, and the groom hummed along. The bride joined him, their voices blending like a secret melody only they knew. For those few minutes the world disappeared, leaving only two hearts singing together. They didn't know that others would remember this as their last joyful song. Back at the dinner venue, the families were setting tables and arranging chairs. The smell of food filled the air, and the guests were eager to see the couple arrive. The bride's mother checked her phone again and again, waiting for her daughter's call. The groom's younger brother practiced a short speech he wanted to give. Nobody knew that the decorated car carrying so many dreams was still on its way but would never reach. The couple's conversation returned to lighter topics. The groom joked about how his friends would tease him endlessly during the dinner. The bride laughed, saying she was ready for anything because she had him by her side. They spoke about their first night in their new home, how they wanted to cook noodles together and maybe watch a movie before falling asleep. They imagined their future so vividly that it felt almost within reach. The minutes passed quickly, but every moment seemed golden. They were in their own world where only love, laughter, and hope existed. The bride touched her husband's cheek and said that even if life was difficult, they would always have each other. He kissed her hand softly, assuring her that nothing could ever break them apart. The car moved steadily, but fate was silently preparing to intervene. While the couple dreamed about tomorrow, destiny was planning something no one could see. The road stretched ahead, calm and ordinary. Yet only half an hour separated their joy from the shock that would change everything. For now, though they were simply two newlyweds lost in love driving toward their future, their hearts were full, their smiles were wide, and their laughter filled the air. In those 30 minutes, life had given them the sweetest moments. Moments so beautiful that people would later replay them in their minds again and again, unable to believe how quickly it all changed. The road ahead seemed calm and peaceful, but life can change in the blink of an eye. The newlyweds were still laughing, still holding hands, still dreaming of the days to come. The bride adjusted her dress, which kept slipping slightly as she sat in the seat. The groom glanced at her, smiling, and told her she looked even more beautiful now than during the ceremony. She blushed, rolling her eyes, but deep down her heart melted at his words. She turned to the window and watched the world pass by, not knowing how quickly everything was about to change. The evening sun was fading slowly, and the street lamps were beginning to light up. Traffic grew heavier as more vehicles filled the road. The groom focused on driving carefully, but he remained relaxed because he was familiar with the route. The bride teased him, saying he was driving too slow for a man who had just gotten married. He laughed, telling her safety came before speed, especially with her by his side. She giggled, leaning closer to him. Those little playful words would become the last sweet exchanges they would ever have. A few cars behind them, people noticed the decorations on the newlyweds' car. Some drivers smiled and honked gently in celebration. A group of young people waved from another vehicle, shouting congratulations. The bride waved back, her eyes shining. It was as if the whole world was happy for them. Yet destiny was waiting at the next turn, hidden like a shadow behind the sunlight. The groom reached for the car radio and changed the station. A romantic song filled the car, its lyrics about love lasting forever. They both sang along softly, sometimes getting the words wrong but laughing anyway. They were so lost in the moment that they didn't see the other car coming fast from a side street. It was a black vehicle, moving much faster than it should, ignoring the red signal. Witnesses later said the driver looked distracted, not even slowing down at the crossing. In that split second, everything changed. The groom turned his head and saw the car too late. The crash was sudden, loud, and violent. The sound of metal colliding echoed through the street like a thunderclap. Glass shattered, tires screeched, and people nearby screamed in shock. The decorated car, filled with ribbons and flowers, was crushed on one side. The ribbons that had been symbols of joy now fluttered in the air like broken threads. The bride and groom had no time to react. The impact threw them forward, and the laughter in the car was replaced with silence. Passers-by rushed toward the wreckage, trying to help. A fruit seller nearby dropped his basket and ran. A man on a motorcycle stopped immediately, pulling out his phone to call for an ambulance. Within minutes, a small crowd gathered, their faces pale with disbelief. People whispered to each other, pointing at the crushed decorations that told them who the victims were. The word spread like fire. It was the newlyweds. Inside the wreck, the scene was heartbreaking. The groom lay motionless over the steering wheel, while the bride's veil was tangled in the broken glass. Her hand still rested on his arm as if even in that moment she hadn't let go of him. Strangers tried to open the doors, but they were jammed. Someone broke a window carefully, cutting their hands in the process just to reach inside. They called their names, but there was no answer. The ambulance arrived quickly, sirens cutting through the air. Paramedics rushed in, pulling the couple out with gentle urgency. They checked for signs of life, but their faces grew grim. Though efforts were made on the spot, it became clear that both had left this world before reaching the hospital. The crowd that had gathered fell silent. Some covered their mouths in shock, while others wiped tears from their eyes. No one could believe that 30 minutes ago this same couple had been smiling and waving, full of hope. Back at the dinner venue, the families were waiting eagerly. Plates of food were being placed on tables, glasses filled, and music prepared. Children were running around waiting to see the bride and groom walk in with their laughter and glow. The bride's mother called her daughter again, but the phone kept ringing with no answer. She told herself they must be busy in the car talking and laughing. The groom's younger brother practiced his short speech one last time, standing proudly in front of a mirror. The hall buzzed with excitement, completely unaware of the silence that had already fallen on the road. Then the phone call came. A stranger's voice explained what had happened. At first, no one could understand the words. Accident, ambulance, serious. The bride's mother froze, the phone slipping from her hand. The groom's father rushed to pick it up, asking questions with a trembling voice. Guests looked around in confusion, their laughter dying quickly. When the truth was finally spoken, the hall that had been full of joy moments earlier filled with cries and disbelief. Family members rushed to the hospital, but when they arrived, the doctors had nothing hopeful to say. The newlyweds were gone, the white flowers on the bride's hair were now stained, and the groom's suit was torn. Parents collapsed in tears, unable to process the sight of their children lying so still. Friends hugged each other tightly, many refusing to believe what their eyes were seeing. The dinner that was prepared remained untouched, the music silenced. The wedding day had turned into a day of mourning. News spread quickly in the community. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had seen the decorated car earlier were shaken. How could happiness turn into tragedy so quickly? How could a journey that began with smiles end in silence within half an hour? People asked these questions again and again, but no answer could bring comfort. The crash scene remained crowded for hours. Broken glass sparkled under the streetlights. The smell of smoke hung in the air, and the flowers from the car lay scattered across the road. Some people picked up the petals gently, whispering prayers as if to honor the couple. The ribbons that once symbolized love now became symbols of fragility, reminding everyone that life can change without warning. Later that night, silence filled the homes of both families. Photos of the bride and groom from the ceremony lay on tables, but no one could bear to look at them. Their clothes, their rings, their laughter, all of it felt like a cruel memory. The tragedy did not only belong to their families, it belonged to everyone who had seen their love. It became a reminder that joy and sorrow can exist side by side, separated by only a few moments. Those 30 minutes after the wedding were the sweetest part of their life together, yet also the last. They laughed, they sang, they dreamed, and then, in an instant, everything was gone. The world had been celebrating their union, but fate had chosen a different ending. People who witnessed it would never forget the sight, the decorated car, the sudden crash, and the silence that followed. It was a story that would be told again and again, not just for the sorrow it carried, but for the lesson it left behind. That life is precious, fragile, and never guaranteed. When the shock of the accident began to settle, people wanted answers. How could such a tragedy happen only 30 minutes after a wedding? Investigators soon arrived at the scene, carefully studying the wreckage. The car of the newlyweds was almost unrecognizable, its decorations crushed among twisted metal. The other vehicle, a black car, stood nearby, its front smashed and its driver shaken. Witnesses came forward, explaining what they had seen. One old shopkeeper described how the black car had ignored the red signal. Another man swore he saw the driver holding a phone just moments before the crash. Bit by bit, the truth started to unfold. The reason behind the accident was as shocking as the loss itself. The driver of the black car had been reckless. Reports later confirmed that he had been under the influence and distracted. His friends had warned him earlier not to drive, but he ignored them. Instead of taking a taxi or asking someone else for help, he chose to sit behind the wheel. That choice destroyed 2 innocent lives in a matter of seconds. People around the community could not believe that such carelessness could cause such heartbreak. At the hospital, the families were not concerned about reasons at first. They were focused only on their loss. Mothers cried, fathers tried to stay strong, siblings held each other tightly. But when the details of the accident reached them, their pain turned to disbelief and anger. How could someone else's foolish decision wipe away their children's future? The bride's father whispered again and again that his daughter was innocent, that she deserved so much more. The groom's mother sat in silence, her tears falling steadily, holding her son's wedding photograph close to her chest. The guests who had been at the dinner venue also heard the truth. The food, the music, the decorations all remained untouched. People gathered in small groups, whispering about the reckless driver. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others expressed outrage. A wedding day had turned into a funeral within hours. For many, the hardest part was knowing that it could have been prevented, if only the driver had made a different choice. The news spread quickly in the city. Local reporters arrived at the hospital, at the accident site, and even at the wedding hall to speak to anyone who would share their story. The headline in the next day's newspaper read, "Newlyweds killed in crash, joy turns to tragedy." People who did not even know the couple were shaken by the story. They saw their photographs, smiling, dressed as bride and groom, and could not believe that within half an hour of those pictures being taken, they were gone. The shocking reason behind their death became a topic of discussion everywhere. Neighbors visited the families offering words of comfort, though no comfort was enough. The bride's childhood friends sat together, remembering the way she used to laugh, the dreams she had about starting her own home. The groom's colleagues recalled how he used to talk about his future wife with excitement, planning every detail of their life together. To know that all those dreams ended not by illness, not by natural cause, but by someone's careless action, was too heavy for them to bear. The funeral was arranged quickly. Both families decided to bury the couple side by side, as they had promised to stay together forever. The day of the funeral was heartbreaking. The same people who had clapped and cheered at the wedding now stood with bowed heads, tears flowing freely. The flowers that once decorated their car were now placed on their graves. The sound of prayers replaced the sound of laughter. Some guests said it felt like time had frozen, that they could still hear the bride's soft laugh and the groom's cheerful voice. The community leaders also spoke about the tragedy. They urged people to learn from this heartbreaking loss. They reminded everyone that driving under the influence was not just a mistake, it was a crime against life. They spoke about the importance of responsibility, about how one careless choice can affect not only the person making it, but also innocent lives. The story of the newlyweds became an example, told in schools, workplaces, and gatherings as a warning. As days passed, the families tried to find strength. The bride's mother would sit by the window every evening, staring at the road as if expecting her daughter to walk back home. The groom's father buried himself in work, but his silence told everyone how broken he was inside. The families found some comfort in each other, often sitting together, sharing memories of the couple. They laughed through tears as they recalled funny childhood stories, but every laugh ended in silence, a reminder of the emptiness left behind. The driver of the black car was taken into custody. Many people demanded justice, but no punishment could bring the newlyweds back. The judge later said that this case should be remembered as a lesson for everyone. While the law would take its course, the greater justice would be if society truly learned to never repeat such a mistake. For the community, the shocking reason behind the tragedy remained unforgettable. It was not fate, it was not an unavoidable accident, it was human error, made worse by negligence. That truth made the story even more painful. People said that if the couple had left just a few minutes earlier or later, they might have been safe. But destiny had placed them on that road at that exact moment, where another person's wrong choice ended their journey. In the following weeks, people often visited the graves. Strangers left flowers, moved by a story they had only read in the newspaper. Some couples came together holding hands, whispering prayers and promising each other that they would always be careful on the road. Parents began teaching their children more strictly about the dangers of careless driving. In a way, the couple's short life together created ripples of awareness that touched many lives. Every time their story was told, people remembered not only their tragic end, but also the love they shared in their final moments, their smiles on the wedding day, Their laughter in the car, their dreams of the future, all of it lived on in memory. The reason for their death was shocking, but the lesson from their life was powerful. Love is precious, time is fragile, and responsibility is the greatest gift we can give to those we care about. The tragedy of the Newlyweds became a silent teacher for many. It reminded everyone that joy can vanish in seconds if we are not careful. And though their families carried sorrow that words could never ease, they also carried pride in knowing that their children's story was changing lives. People began to say that the couple, though gone, had become a symbol of why every life must be valued and protected. The days after the tragedy were heavy with silence. The wedding that was supposed to be remembered for joy was now remembered for loss. In both families' homes, the decorations from the celebration were still hanging. Flowers that once carried the fragrance of happiness had dried and withered, but no one had the heart to remove them. The photographs from the wedding stood on tables framed with ribbons, yet each time someone looked at them, tears filled their eyes. The bride's laughter seemed to echo in the halls of her home, while the groom's cheerful voice seemed to still linger in his parents' house. But both were gone, and everyone was left to carry the memory instead of the person. The community also mourned with them. People who didn't even know the couple felt the weight of the tragedy. Strangers who had only seen their smiling faces in newspapers or online posts whispered prayers for them. Their story became a lesson repeated again and again in conversations. In offices, schools, and gatherings, people spoke of how precious life is and how fragile happiness can be. Many were shocked not only by the suddenness of the accident, but also by the reason behind it, a careless choice that cost 2 innocent lives. At the graveside, visitors came regularly. Some left flowers, others stood in silence, while some shed tears as if mourning their own. Couples often came hand in hand, promising each other that they would be more careful, that they would protect their love by making safe choices. Parents brought their children, pointing to the graves and gently teaching them that responsibility is not just about oneself, but about everyone on the road. Slowly, the place where the Newlyweds rested became more than a grave. It became a reminder to all who passed by. For the families, grief was constant, but they tried to hold on to strength. The bride's mother often sat with her daughter's wedding dress folded neatly on her lap. She would stroke the fabric, remembering the moment her daughter walked down the aisle glowing with happiness. The groom's father, usually a strong and silent man, would sit quietly at the dinner table, staring at the empty chair where his son once sat. The silence was painful, but they found comfort in sharing stories. They spoke about the couple's childhood, their kindness, their dreams. Even though tears followed every memory, those stories kept them alive in hearts. Friends of the couple also struggled to accept the reality. The bride's best friend recalled how they had planned to meet after the honeymoon, to talk about the trip and laugh together. The groom's colleagues remembered how he spoke about building a future, about saving for a new house, about wanting to make his wife smile every single day. Now those plans had ended, but the love behind them continued to inspire those left behind. In the weeks that followed, many people in the community organized awareness programs. They invited experts to speak about road safety, about the dangers of reckless driving, about the importance of valuing every life. The story of the Newlyweds was often shared at these gatherings. Their smiling faces, captured forever in their wedding photos, were shown as a symbol, not just of love, but of the cost of negligence. People listened, their hearts heavy, and promised themselves they would never allow such carelessness in their own lives. Slowly, the families also found ways to honor the couple. On what would have been their 1-month wedding anniversary, both families gathered together at the graves. They brought flowers, lit candles, and prayed. Though the tears did not stop, there was also a sense of peace in knowing that their children's love was remembered by so many. They decided to start a small charity in their memory, one that would help raise awareness about road safety and also support young couples who were beginning their journey together. In this way, they turned their pain into something meaningful, hoping that no other family would face the same loss. The story spread even further. Journalists wrote about the couple again, not just about the tragedy, but about the lessons their lives had taught. People on social media shared posts with their photos, adding messages about responsibility, love, and the importance of cherishing every moment. Their names became known far beyond their city. Even in faraway towns, people heard about the wedding that turned into heartbreak, and they too felt touched. In time, the grief began to change. It never disappeared. Grief for such a loss never truly goes away, but it became softer. It transformed into love remembered rather than pain endured. The bride's younger cousin said once that whenever she closed her eyes, she saw her cousin smile, and instead of crying, she tried to smile back. The groom's little nephew, too young to understand at first, later asked why everyone cried when they spoke about his uncle. His grandmother told him it was because they loved him too much. That explanation seemed to make sense to the child, and he said that one day he too would love someone that much. Even though their lives were cut short, the love the couple shared became larger than time. In just 30 minutes after their wedding, they had shown what love looked like. Laughter in a car, soft words whispered between songs, dreams spoken with shining eyes. Those moments became timeless. People spoke of them as if they had lived a lifetime of love in those short minutes. It was as if destiny had chosen to capture all the beauty of their bond and place it in one small window of time. Every year, on their wedding date, both families and close friends gather at the graveside. They bring fresh flowers, light candles, and sit together. Some share stories, others sit in silence, but all feel the same connection, the reminder of how precious love is. Those gatherings have become more than moments of mourning. They have become celebrations of love, faith, and the strength of memory. The reason behind their loss will always remain shocking, but what people choose to remember is not just the accident, not just the mistake of another driver. They remember the couple's joy, their kindness, their dreams. They remember that life can change in 30 minutes, but love, once given, remains forever. In the end, their story lives on not as one of despair, but as one of inspiration. It teaches people to value their time, to be responsible, and to treasure every smile and every hand they hold. The couple may not have had the long life they dreamed of, but in their short journey they left a mark that no one can erase. Their story became a gift to the world, a painful, powerful reminder that love is eternal and that every moment counts.